You're listening to Bold Hearts, Big Moves, the show for female entrepreneurs who want it all: a thriving business, deep self love, and fulfilling relationships. I'm Erin Anderson, and each week we will dive into how to set stronger boundaries, make empowered choices, and show up in life and business with boldness, authenticity, and heart. Because let's be real, the money you make is directly related to the love that you have for yourself and the strength of your relationships. So if you're ready to lead with love and make those big moves with those bold hearts, let's dive in.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Bold Hearts, Big Moves. So today we are talking about sexual boundaries. Now, at first, when I was learning about the different types of boundaries, I was a little confused about this one because it seemed to me like, a sexual boundary is just a break off of a physical boundary, right? And while that's true, because sexuality is something that is a physical piece of us, it is also kind of different because it isn't something that we do with a wide range of people. Um, for me personally, I am very much of the belief that uh, sexuality is something that happens between husband and wife. You save yourself for marriage. Like, I believe all those things, very much so. And I've seen the, I don't want to say the detriment, but I've seen the consequences of people who haven't waited for marriage and what that's done to their confidence levels and what that's done to their bodies, and a lot of other things. And so, because this is something that is done with really pretty much just one relationship, it is also something that we need to discuss as a separate boundary. And, anybody that talks about boundaries and you look up boundaries, a lot of people will agree that sexuality or your sexual boundaries, even though they are a type of physical boundary, they really do uh, have a category in and of themselves. And even though, like, our sexuality is something that we definitely want to keep safe because that's one of the most vulnerable pieces of ourselves. Um, it is also really our creative energy at work. And this is also part of the reason too why it is something that we need to have its own set of boundaries around. It's still going to be just a little different. Whereas with a physical boundary, yes, it's all about keeping your spaces safe and your body safe, because that is a piece of you. Your sexual boundaries are keeping your energy, your sexuality, and your creative abilities safe as well. So let's go ahead and dive in to the sexual boundary and kind of explain it a little bit to you. So your sexual boundary, you really want to take into consideration your five senses. Every single one of our five senses are engaged when we are having sexual activity. You have your sight, your smell, pheromones, anyone, right? You have touch, you have taste, and you also have your auditory senses, all in all working while you are engaged in sexual activity. So you've got to ask yourself then, what do you want to experience in each one of these areas? What do you want to see, right? What do you want to touch? How do you want to be touched? How do you want to be seen? Now, I think that how you want to be seen and how you want to be touched, even though it's very important to be considerate of another person's sexual boundaries, right? I'm definitely not discounting that, but I think it's even more important to ask the questions like, how do you want to be seen? How do you want to be touched? How do you want to smell? How do you want to be heard? These are all questions that we ask when going into a sexual activity. Now, if you talk to like, and then you guys know, if you've been following me for a while, that a lot of my background is in betrayal trauma, right? But I've kind of moved more into, boundaries and actually just trauma healing in general because there's so many different types of trauma. And also for helping entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs. Um, so that way, you guys can have a healthy home, a healthy life. But one of the things I heard a lot and actually still hear a lot of is like this dissonance in the bedroom between husband and wife. And a lot of it, since especially where I work with women, it comes down to, someone like she's not feeling heard, she's not feeling seen, she's not feeling noticed or respected or desired in the relationship. Husband has been kind of caught up in other things in life, whether it be work, whether it be his own trauma, his own stuff, like uh she's definitely feeling that disconnect, right? And sometimes it's not the husband, it's just the wife's own insecurities because let's face it, society is not kind when it comes to the female body. You have to look a certain way. You have to smell a certain way. You have to be a certain thing. Like females in general have to achieve this state of perfection. And that's a very false state. And so women, I think, have a lot of pressure on themselves to be a certain way sexually. Otherwise, they don't feel desired. And that's a big issue, especially if you're dealing with a business, because your sexual energy actually does affect your business quite a bit. If you don't feel desired in your most intimate relationships, how will you feel desired in your business relationships? And if you think about business relationships, that's a lot of what they operate upon is desire. I want this, right? And if you're not feeling desirable to your partner, that is definitely leaking into your business. So, your sexual boundary actually is one of the ones you definitely want to focus on when it comes to your business as well. A healthy sex life is actually very, very good for your business. Um, so you want to ask yourself, like, how do you want to be touched? How do you want to be seen? How do you want to smell? How do you want to be tasted? And I would say tasted in the way of like, how do you want to be kissed? Because that is a piece of sexuality. And how do you want to be heard? What sounds good in the bedroom to you? What sounds respectful? What makes you feel confident? What makes you feel desired? What are you okay with? What are you not okay with? Sex needs to be a very mutual, respectful, and voluntary act. An act that drives deeper passion, creation, desire. It's very much an act of what we want. And it needs to be something of what both parties want. This is why when we have been sexually violated, it feels like such a major violation, is because our sexuality is so much a part of our core. Um, you know, I worked with a gal, I've actually worked with several women. It wasn't just one, who've dealt with a lot of sexual trauma, sexual abuse, unwanted sexual advances. Now, this is not something new to women in general. As a matter of fact, Teal Swan, she talks about this a lot, where she'll go into a room, and this is something that a lot of men don't understand about women. She'll go into a room and she will be speaking to like hundreds of people, and she says, okay, if you've ever felt like your life has been threatened, raise your hand. Well, inevitably, almost every hand in the room goes up. If your life has been threatened in the last 24 hours, keep your hand raised. All the men put their hands down, but all the women keep them raised. And she talks about this a lot. And she says that the reason why is because women are far more vulnerable in life than what men are. And that's true. We are very much more so vulnerable than what men are. Now, whether you're a feminist or whether you're uh, macho or whatever, like you might be scoffing at that, but it is still true. Women are not as muscular as men. We are not as tall, not as big. We are far more vulnerable to their strength than what men are to ours. Men fall for a woman's essence. They love the femininity that a woman brings, at least a masculine does, right? And if you also think about a sexual dynamic between men and women tend to need to relax while the man tends to need to show up. It's very interesting how sexuality does play in our creative energies. If we're wanting to dive more into our femininity, exploring that sexual side of ourselves where we're not dominant, where we are able to relax with our partner to feel safe is so important for a woman. Whereas a man needs to feel uh not necessarily in control, but like he's protecting her. He also protects her essence during a sexual encounter. When those things are actually happening, sex is out of this world amazing. But so often we forget those things because masculinity, true masculinity, has been diminished, and so has true femininity. Now, I don't know if you guys have followed me over here from the Other Side of the Struggle podcast, uh, but you may have heard me say that a feminine cannot be truly feminine without a true masculine. And what I mean by that is we do, as women, need the protection and the safety that the masculine provides, a true masculine. And so, if we don't have that, we tend to need to look out for our own safety, our own protections, our own well-being, because we are being preyed upon sexually. Women are far more likely to be sexually assaulted than a man. It's not even a 10 to 1, it's like 1,000 to 1 kind of a statistic. Now, don't quote me on that because I haven't looked it up, but it's way more. Women and children are far more preyed upon. And if you look at the statistics behind, uh, sexuality, like sex trafficking, it is women and children really that are being sex trafficked and exposed in so many vulnerable ways to the world in ways that they shouldn't be. Men don't have to worry about that like women and children do. So, this is also part of the reason why it's really important to know your sexual boundaries. Um, when women come to me and they, like entrepreneur women, especially when they come to me and they've had these traumas, they really struggle with earning a living in their businesses because their self-worth is so low. So that's actually where we start, is we help them answer again these same questions. Well, what does it feel like? What does good touch feel like? How do you want to be heard? How do you want to be seen? What kind of pheromone, what kind of essence do you want to give off? That's actually a major energy piece. And like, what do you want to taste more in this life? I don't ask how they want to be tasted because, again, that is pretty specific to your sexual boundary. Um, but how do you want to experience life? We experience life through those five senses, and so it's very important to also put our filters through those five senses. Um, the other things too I want to also mention, especially in a sexual boundary, is what kind of language do you allow? Again, you want to feel respectful. If it doesn't feel respectful, if you feel like it's being degrading or derogatory towards you, right? Then do you stop the act of sexual activity? What positions are you okay with? What type of sex are you okay with? Are you using birth control? Also, I think a big piece too is do not discuss your sex life with anybody other than your partner and possibly a therapist. Or someone who is trained to help you with these types of things. Because sexuality is such a vulnerable piece of ourselves that when we try to bring other people and their perceptions into our sex life, something that really should be between two people, uh, all of a sudden it's a whole lot like having sex with everybody watching. That is such a private and intimate act that it really needs to be, and so it's such a vulnerable thing that it really does need to be discussed only with your partner or with someone who's trained to help in that area. This is a lot of the times where marriage counseling comes up, where a husband wants all the sex, or even possibly the wife is more of the sexually driven one, where one side is far more sexually driven, and the other side is like, oh my gosh, give me a break, right? Um, it's really important to be able to discuss our sexuality without judgment with our partner. This is also another reason why our listening and our talking boundaries are especially important when it comes to our sexuality, our health, our sexual boundaries as well, because if we can't discuss our sex life with our partner with respect, mutual affection, understanding, and the desire to understand, as well as make the experience best, as wonderful for both of us as it possibly can be, then sex kind of doesn't feel good. It feels like we're being used. And since we're not tools, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm not a hammer, right? I don't like feeling like I'm a tool. I like feeling like somebody sees the essence of who I am and they love that. They desire that. They want to connect to that. And that is what sex does. So it's also important that when we're not feeling those things, to also be able to say no. This is also, our sexual boundary is also so important because it is one of the boundaries where a very clear yes and a very clear no is very important. And also, what we will do to keep ourselves safe because it's such a vulnerable piece of ourselves. We need to know how we are going to act. And lastly, to think about your sexual boundary, you want to also consider um, what it is also like to be confident. What does the confident you do? What does the confident you show up like? People who, and I've seen this, like, there's just a statistic that talks about like people who feel who look unconfident. I don't know what the word is exactly that I'm looking for, but somebody who doesn't look confident, somebody who looks like they don't love themselves, like they kind of hang their head and they kind of shuffle their feet and they look really sad a lot and like they're just really down. Um, those are the type of people that are more preyed upon in a sexual assault type of case. Because sexual assault is not about sex, it's about domination and power. And when someone feels that sexually vulnerable or that vulnerability in themselves, uh, they're less likely to talk. They're more likely to blame themselves for what happened. And this is something that people who prey upon others sexually know, and they count on it. And I know that sounds like totally sick and twisted, and it is. It absolutely is. But no, nevertheless, I mean, it's the reality of the situation. So a healthy sexual boundary is also a boundary that helps someone feel confident in their own skin, right? Um, Now I get asked this question a lot, like, but I don't feel good about the way I look. Okay, just so you know, I have extra weight too. I have flab, I have rolls, I have the stuff, right? That most people would look at and be like, ooh, right? Uh in a societal uh definition. But here's the truth. And I have said this to so many of my clients, and it changes their body dysmorphia fast. Because here's the thing, I believe in God. I believe God also gave me my body. If you understand how a body works, you can see God's working within it, specifically for you. See, if you think about a fat cell uh, actually encapsulates viruses, bacteria, it encapsulates our parasites. It's a major piece of our immunity. And so when a person actually has a lot of excess weight, it is their body protecting them. That's legitimately what is happening. You can actually study this, okay? That doesn't mean that we want to have all of that protection all the time, right? But it is the body showing up for the well-being of the person. That means our body is not designed or flawed or designed to be ugly. Our body is the literal physical manifestation of God's love for us. It has our back. It tells us how to take care of ourselves. If we have excess weight, all that is our body saying, hey, we need some extra nutrition in this area, or extra rest, or extra this, so that way we can release and detoxify so you're running at your best. It is literally God's physical manifestation of his love for you. To have anything less than complete confidence in the miracle and the beauty that your body is to believe a lie. I don't care what size you are. Fat, thin, 125 pounds, 1,025 pounds. Like I don't care. Granted, I want you to be healthy. Sometimes that does mean that we need to work on our weight. But it's nothing to be ashamed of. Our bodies are beautiful. And it makes sense that an adversary, or Satan, if you want to put him in here, would want us to believe that our bodies are not beautiful if they are the physical manifestation of God's love for us. They are a legitimate reminder of how to take care of ourselves. It has your back. That is what your body is. So how do you take care? Now, if you think about your body in those terms, how do you take care of it sexually? How important is it to you then to keep it safe sexually? How do you show up sexually for it as a best friend? That helps clarify your yeses and nos when it comes to sexuality. What do you want to experience with a sexual partner? And when you lean into that and that confidence, it also blesses your business because it is the same type of mindset and confidence that creates a thriving, successful business. There was a study done a while ago with some of the top Fortune 500 owners. They were asked about their sex life, and come to find out, they all had a very high sex drive, high sex life, a very fulfilling sex life, and usually with one partner. Our sexuality actually does affect our money story in a major way. And we want to feel safe with our money, and we also want to feel safe with our partners. So we'll be diving deeper into the money boundary, and we will also reference, like I said, again, the sexual boundaries when we get into the money boundaries. But consider, again, how do you want to be touched? How do you want to be seen? What type of kissing are you okay with? And really start to set some of those sexual boundaries for yourself, because I promise it's so much more fulfilling. All right, my loves. Next week, we are talking about our energetic boundary. So stay tuned for that. Again, make sure to send in any notes, questions you have to the show. I'm happy to answer them. We do have a fan mail place. So feel free to do that. And until next week, guys, I'll see you soon. Bye.
All right, Boundary Boss Babes. I'm super excited that you tuned in with me today. Make sure you tune in again next week as we chat about more Boundary Boss Babe topics. We're going to get into so many other things about how to set boundaries with your business, how to set boundaries with your relationships, so you can truly have the time, the money, and the flexibility that you are seeking. So tune in next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Let your other Boss Babe friends know about it. And also, if you've got any questions, make sure you submit them into the podcast by clicking on the send us a text message at the bottom of the podcast description. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. See you later, Boss Babes.